What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick.
I'm Jammin John.
And we have an album review for you. And this weekend's kind of like, a little bit more underground, so we kind of dug around and found some absolutely disgusting death metal to go over. Not that that's like different than many other weeks, but it was just one that popped up on my radar. Like, hey, we've been over that band, despite my partner's memory here.
Look, stop, okay? All right?
It's only just starting.
It was 2020. It was a time in history for all of us, and it's possible to forget things.
Anyway, that band that he definitely forgot is Skelethal, and we're going to go over their latest album, Within Corrosive Continuums. This comes out on the 12th of July on Hell's Headbangers. This band formed in 2012 in France. This is their third full length. I got into them with their debut, Of the Depths, and once again, we did review their last album, Unveiling the Threshold. I remember it fondly because I edited it and we put it up. Like, hey, we reviewed that album. But, anyway.
Marijuana's a hell of a drug.
It's okay. But to refresh everyone's memory, even his, this is some absolutely gross, old school, grimy, filthy death metal that sounds like it was plucked right out of the 90s.
Yeah.
And, well, I mean, if you've been watching the channel for long enough, you know we love that sort of thing.
Pretty much, if you're a fan of 90s death metal, like we all are, and you've been in the scene for a long time, and you've become accustomed to hearing that gritty, nasty tone of 90s death metal, then a lot of this will feel very familiar to you, like, right off the bat. And it's mixed together quite well in this record. Starts off with the opening song, Creation. It's a question mark.
There's a question mark.
The Creation? Maybe.
Did I do that?
Actually, very musical for the first time in quite some time. An intro that's not all synths and noise and blah, blah, blah. Groovy off time, big riffs right away, just kind of kicks you in the face and you say, is it 1992? Is it?
It kind of sounds like it. It kind of sounds like, but in a really good way. And production-wise across the board, like this has that gritty production that I like, where it is gritty but well mixed. Everything is cleanly separated, but everything has like a layer of grit. It sounds organic still. Like the guitars sound very sludgy and then kind of dirty sounding, like they submerged them in mud and just pulled them out. Like, good enough, we're not even gonna rinse this thing off. The vocals are nice and cavernous and kind of ghastly sounding, and I love the drum sound in particular. The drums just sound natural, like about as organic as drums could sound on an album. And again, I gotta give them props for, doing an intro that is actually musical. It is, a lead-in track. Like they can just like kind of open up with this live. It's not just something that like hit play on the laptop or whatever the hell
you play, we're all gonna tune.
Yep. Fog machine's on.
Yep. Getting ready, gonna fart. Yeah.
There it is. All right, didn't want to do that on stage because I'm pretty sure the mic would have picked that up. But that goes right into Spectrum of Morbidity, and man, like, again, fiercely 90s sound, blasty, loads of riffs. This is a riffy as hell album and a lot of variety in the riffs. Like you get, of course, what you're definitely going to get in like most death metal albums, lots of catchy tremolo harmonies, but there's a good mix of like kind of sludgy, angular riffs, lots of like really solid lead melodies and lead harmonies and just flat out ripping solos. And like something that I didn't necessarily remember as much from the last one, punk, like lots of crust punk breaks. Like right away on Spectrum of Morbidity, like there are these filthy tremolos, it's blasty, you're kind of already in like a Morbid Angel kind of gear. And then it kind of breaks into like almost like an Autopsy, like D-beat punk sort of thing. Like, oh, all right, that's kind of cool. And it does that quite frequently, but the thing I like with these little changes between these punky kind of moments, it's rowdy, it's pit spinning stuff, to the big sludgy tremolos and grooves and blast beats, is it kind of keeps both those elements pretty fresh. There's a lot of bands out there, and granted, I love tremolo harmonies, so I'm not dogging that, but sometimes there are bands that just kind of hang on those tremolo harmonies like a little bit too long. It's like, dude, they're awesome, but kind of break it up a little bit. And generally when they do break it up, it's kind of like, all right, we're just going to kind of halftime it. It's like, well, it's still kind of the same riff. These guys kind of break out of that lane almost completely on a lot of these tracks. Eyes Sewn, Mouthful, and Upon the Immemorial Ziggurat. That's a mouthful. These songs in particular, there's a good break between those moments, and you get kind of two different kinds of swirling, non-deodorant wearing energy that just kind of, kicks up a layer of grit and filth on the pit floor.
And songs flow really well too, in spite of the fact that they're often pretty scatterbrained, like Eyes Sewn, Mouth Full. That song is just nuts, full of gross harmonies and sludgy grooves, but it transitions like constantly between a punk groove and blast beats and back to sludge and a little bit of doom, and it's all over the place. But even the stop on the dime transitions don't sound like they're out of place.
The way that song opens, I mean, honestly, it almost feels like a different band at a certain point. Like, it's very, I don't know, like, very elastic. Like, there's bending, weird, lurching riffs and melodies. It's very dissonant, but the guitars don't necessarily feel as, like, thick and heavy in these spots. And, I don't know, it kind of just goes right in this punk spot, and it kind of stays, like, I don't know, not like low register for a good point. And then when it shifts to these blast beats and tremolos, it's like, all right, well, that's flat out death metal now. But this whole first part, I don't know, it's kind of like just sleazy, dirty crust punk with like a death metal vocalist on top of it. And this album, I wouldn't say like it has like a ton of atmosphere. Like, there's definitely atmospheric moments, like the beginning and the end of Mesmerizing Flies at the Doors of Death and the long synth break on the title track. Outside of that, like, a lot of these songs kind of just get down to it. But I kind of like that, the atmosphere is like a little bit minimal, because this whole album just has, I don't know, it's kind of like a texture to it. It's gritty and kind of rotten and slimy. It's like, I don't know, like snot and sand mixed together. I don't know, it's kind of gross comparison there, but I mean, it's death metal, it's fine.
A sinus infection at the beach.
There you go. That's extra miserable.
Build a sandcastle. Great drum work, too. Their session drummer, Ilmer Marty Uibu, I'm sorry if I fucked up your name, ex-Necrowretch and ex-Bloody Sign. Man, this dude does a great job. I mean, if you jam Necrowretch, you already know what's up. But what I like is all the cymbal work. Like, there's tons and tons and tons of hi-hat grabs and cymbal grabs and just, like, really kind of off-time hi-hat work that goes into everything. And just big, massive, nasty turnovers all the time. Like, he does well to follow these crazy guitar patterns.
Yeah, the guitar patterns, again, are wild. Like, of course, you brought up, like, the punk stuff, which, I don't know, it kind of gives it, like, again, like, almost like a grindy sort of vibe, but surprisingly, in those sections, it kind of just sticks with the D beat. It's not really blasting much. But there are also, like, doomy, just kind of sinister sections, like the beginning of Fatal Abstraction or the beginning of Mesmerizing Flies at the Doors of Death. It actually has flies at the beginning. They're kind of swarming around, and then you get this lumbering, lurching, gross riff, and then bam, hits another gear, goes right into blast beats. The transitions on here can be sharp, but all of the songs really do flow very smoothly. Like, there's a couple of transitions where I thought, like, all right, maybe gonna hammer that one out like a little bit more, but for the most part, this whole album has a great flow to it, and a lot of the songs, the way they're stacked up, they don't necessarily run into each other much. Like, Eyes Sewn, Mouth Full starts off with these really just kind of cold, ugly, dissonant melodies. It's very hooky, but it's also like kind of a different sort of like more sinister vibe to it. And while it does kind of like go back to what they generally do on here, like, lots of just like Morbid Angel, Witch Vomit, Hyperdontia kind of stuff, it does kind of have like these little clever accents to the riffs and melodies that do make it stand out. And then the next track comes in like it's raining cinder blocks upon the immemorial ziggurat. Man, the chugs that open that song in particular are just absolutely insanely heavy. Like, brutal right from the get-go. No build-up, no bullshit. Let's go.
And the bridge on that song is really cool, too. Almost a drum solo, I guess. Like a big, isolated batch of drum turnovers. And then the bass comes in. The bass works really good. But it makes kind of sense, too. When you look up more about the drummer, he also was in, for a while, like a jazz rock band. And that whole section screams jazz.
100%. Like, it's just smooth and buttery, all clean tones. The bass work on there is really solid. And yeah, you get this kind of like jazz fusion moment, and it transitions beautifully right back into the giant-sized, chuggy, groovy riff section. I was like, dude, that's kind of like a clever little nuance that I definitely don't remember from the last one.
Yeah.
And I 100% believe you don't remember from the last one.
Dude, look, stop. Well, I don't remember that necessarily coming out of the last record. It's great in this record. I like it. You did a good job, even if you've done it before. which I wouldn't know about.
I mean, since I definitely remember the last one, I jammed it actually fairly recently because I saw that they were coming out with a new album. In comparison to Unveiling the Threshold, I think this one, in terms of the production, that kind of layer of grit that is wiped off on here, you get to hear more of the intricacies in terms of the music on here. And I think this kind of like really lets their like songwriting ability kind of shine a little bit more, because every transition, it doesn't kind of get lost in, you know, a bit of a layer of mud. And that especially works well with what I would believe is probably their most ambitious track to date, namely because I haven't seen this band do a song this long, because their last track, the title track, is almost 13 minutes long, is a gigantic instrumental with possibly the most dynamic music on the entire album. That is definitely saying something, because while this is very much rooted in 90s death metal, it definitely plays on a lot of tropes that are very familiar. There's a kind of fun way a lot of this is rearranged, and again, the, you know, interesting melodies and like weird leads, and you know, all that kind of comes together in its own kind of unique way. But the last track being this giant-sized instrumental with very dynamic transitions. I think this song in particular is just a huge standout in terms of them exploring a lot of different avenues that they probably haven't explored as much before, at least.
They incorporated pretty much every trope of death metal I think that you could possibly put into a song. Like, it starts out big, doomy intro, and like they let it breathe for a minute too. It's not just a doomy type riff like they did in some of the other songs where they kind of let in with it and said, okay, here it is, before cutting to a blast. Like this one, it got doomy and it was dark and it was sinister and it was evil and it had time to breathe before they cut inevitably to, you know, a blast beat or a big nasty tremolo. But like, yeah, it covered doom, it covered death metal, it covered punk, it covered thrash. It was an amalgamation of pretty much everything they brought to the table. And it went really well.
Yeah, the clean intro to it is a really good setup. Great lead work across the board. And again, giant dynamic shifts. Most of it, I would say, straight up old school death metal, but you have these proggy flourishes on there every now and then. Like, there's just like a slightly bit more like adventurousness in terms of the songwriting. And that works well for the most part. I will say one of my big issues on this album is there's a big lull in the song with this very long droning synth part, which I thought was cool. And initially I thought was the end of the album. I was like,
yep.
Oh, all right.
Yep. They're
going to go out on this. It's very lush sounding. It's just droning synth harmonies. It sounds like you just turned on a scene somewhere in the middle of Blade Runner. I'm totally cool with that. That's an amazing movie. And then it kind of just hung there for a while. I was like, okay, we're gonna do like a long fade out here? Is this we're still here?
I thought it was done. I put down my pencil and I was like, okay, great fade out. I thought we were done, and just when I thought it was over and when I thought it was safe to get up and use the restroom, nope, back to this big old thrashy energy, just pit swirling, like, all right, we're back. One more time, punch your buddy in the face, let's go.
Yeah, it's this kind of like out of nowhere resurgence, and I feel like they could have faded out on that synth part. That would have been fine. Everything else up to that point I thought was really good, but I think they just kind of like lengthened that part too much, and there really wasn't much else other than this droning atmosphere. Like, if there was like a drum beat that came in or a bass line, something to kind of show that there's going to be a build into the next movement of the song, I think that probably would have worked a little bit better. But that abrupt shift on there, it kind of comes off like someone was jamming Tangerine Dream, and then immediately the next track was something off of like Beneath the Remains. You know, it was a bit jarring. Outside of that moment, and I will say that they might overuse some of the punky D-beat sections. Like, a lot of those sections kind of sound similar, like they're interchangeable. Like, you could have taken that D-beat section and put it right in the song where there was another one and just kind of switch them around. I don't know if they would necessarily change the song that much, but outside of that, I think this is pretty damn solid. Like, you know, this is just gritty, old school death metal, loaded with riffs, and in terms of songwriting, I think this might showcase some of their best songwriting yet. So overall, I'm going to give this 4 stars. This is a solid, just nasty death metal album packed with riffs. I mean, it kind of does pretty much everything that I want 90s death metal to do, but there's also like a little additional flash in here. Like, again, the drum work in here I think is absolutely fantastic.
Yes.
Lots of great riffs with like character to them. The lead harmonies and all the wild solos on here add a lot to it. I love the vocal delivery. It's kind of got that kind of mid-range ghastliness, but there's like high screams. There's also some good low roars. And I gotta say, that last instrumental, the title track, while it does have one section on there that kind of just drags, the rest of it I think is some absolutely fantastic writing. If you're a fan, again, Hyperdontia, Morbid Angel, Monstrosity, Witch Vomit, stuff like that, definitely check this band out. Check out their other releases too. I know that they're pretty damn good. What do you think about those earlier releases?
You know, as we get older, as we age, we tend to forget things. I'm really sorry, you guys. I have no idea where my brain was. It obviously wasn't with Skelethal, but it should be. I'm going to go ahead and give this record 4 stars as well. It's a riffy, jammy banger full of nasty harmonies and down low-tuned tremolos and angular riffs, and just sounds like a bucket of slime covered in like metal shavings and cement.
Just like Mom used to make.
With molasses like dripping over the edge, and a kid with sticky fingers runs at Nick, and you don't get that joke, but it's funny.
I hate sticky.
Anyway, yeah, it sounds great. The songs all flow really well. They transition nicely. There are tons of awesome groovy moments in this record. They really don't leave anything to chance. They really just pack in a bunch of awesome things and stack it on top of another bunch of awesome things. I don't know. It's a great record. It's a great jam. I'm really sorry that I don't remember the last record once again, because he's going to keep bringing it up to no end, because that's what he does. If you're a big fan, again, of 90s death metal, Morbid Angel, Hyperdontia, Phobophilic, I got Phobophilic vibes. You'll hear it. It's in there. If you're a fan of any of that, plus 90s death metal, you're probably going to dig this. I'd recommend checking it out.
So, if you enjoyed this review, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there's a link down below to thrallsofmetal.com. Our Patreon link is there. It is also on our channel in the banner in the bottom right-hand corner. But if you're looking for Thralls Metal stuff, you have to go to thrallsmetal.com. We have t-shirts, both old and new. The old ones are discounted, provided we have your size. And we even have hats, so if you're looking for any of that stuff, click the link down below.
Tons of stuff coming from Thralls of Metal, album reviews. We got the Meshuggah ranking that we're filming this weekend. Finally. That's going to be awesome. Metal Is It Not Metal, States of Metal, tons of metal things. Thank you to everybody that joined us last night for our little impromptu live stream.
It was fun.
Yeah, it was fun. I was surprised to see that many people on in the middle of the night. That was really cool. But really, yeah, all of this stuff we do here at Thralls of Metal, we keep doing for you guys. We love you. We appreciate you. Thank you to all of our family, our friends, our subscribers, just everybody who's become a big part of Thralls of Metal. We couldn't do this without you guys. This has become a gigantic part of our lives, and it's really cool to see it become a big part of your lives. Thank you.
Yeah, you guys absolutely rule. And again, tons of content coming your way. So one more big thank you, because you guys are awesome, and we will catch you later.